welcome to Elephants in Our Rooms. And we have a panel today with myself, Janet Carol Lessin, and Debra DeFranco, and Russell Scott Brinegar. And we are going to talk about everything political from the Democratic or independent perspective, and the elephants in our rooms, and about COVID and stochastic terrorism and active measures, and what are those things, and how are they playing out. So I'm going to turn on the mics of my co-hosts, Debra DeFranco and Russell Brinegar, and I forgot to mark which one's which, so I'm just going to ask you. First of all, let's have Debra check in and just check in, and we're going to check your mic, make sure you're on and working. So go ahead, Debra, say hi.
Aloha, everybody.
Good,
Hello.
good. And we're going to start with Russell because he's been away for a few weeks. So hi, Russell.
Hello, how are you doing?
We're doing great. Oh, before we start, we have a page up on elephantsinOurrooms.com and on aquarianradio.com. I put a link on both pages and lots of things that we're talking about. So please check that out. Lots of photos, links to, dozens and dozens of articles. There's so much going on in the world right now. So go ahead, Russell, we're going to start with you.
Okay, well, it's been
you were going to do a
an
report on
interesting
active
year.
measures. Yeah,
We did. There's a really good documentary on Prime called Active Measures that explains what Russia's been up to in the world about destroying democracy from within by planting individuals that are sympathetic to the Kremlin inside different countries and taking them down from within. And there's a lot of our politicians that are aware of all of this that's going on. And I think they're actually kind of reluctant to come fully forward with it until after Trump is gone. And I think a lot of this is going to come out after he's gone because we've really been taken for a ride.
Can you clarify what you mean by that? So are these the GOP Republicans that might have? Who's the they, without, I guess, naming specifically,
Okay,
but who are the they that might come forward?
United States Intelligence. Intelligence, people like Eric Swalwell, James Woolsey, people on the inside of what's been going on with active measures. Active measures, for listeners that aren't aware of the term, is just a way that a tiny country or a smaller country can take down bigger countries without a military. And according to James Woolsey, who's on the inside of the Director of Central Intelligence in the 90s, he says there's over 1,000 Russian agents embedded inside the United States whose sole purpose is to take the country down from within. And there's quite a bit of ties, between Trump and Russian oligarchs. Malcolm Nance has written 3 books about this, about the ties between Trump and the Kremlin. And most of my Republicans.
Could you send me the links to those 3 books, and I'll put them on the page, Russell?
Right now?
So that our people. No, don't try to do it now. But after the show, because this is the show pages are up there for people to educate themselves. So since we're revoking those 3 books, it'd be a good idea to put them up on our website as recommended books and resources. So, that's fascinating.
All right. Well, Malcolm Nance is a former Naval Intelligence Briefing Officer and a counterterrorism expert, and he's written 3 books about the Trump administration's connections to the Kremlin and how they've been manipulated into the goals of Moscow now for 4 years. So it's disturbing information, and most of my Trump-supporting or Republican friends don't believe a word of it, but it's all stuff that you can verify and check out on your own. If you do your own due diligence and research, you can check out all the names and all the connections and ascertain the truth of the situation. There's over 30 Trump towers all over the world, and it seems like they're all involved in money laundering to a certain extent. There's several Russian oligarchs that have been caught living at Trump Tower, and in 2013 they got busted for gambling operations and prostitution. The guy that ran that went back to Moscow, and I mean it's just so in your face and so huge that I'm really surprised it's not being talked about more than it is. About the only sole voice out there is Malcolm Nance, and most of my friends who support Trump won't give him the time of day. There was a white nationalist. The active measures fuels things like white nationalism. They fuel both the far right and the far left to try to get everybody to hate each other. They get everybody on both sides of the fence, utilizing the cognitive deficits on the fringes of both sides of the political spectrum to hate each other. And you just got, I mean, you got, in the last 4 years, you got people that won't even speak to each other anymore because one side supports Trump and the other side doesn't. And they've actually thrown friends and family members under the bus for a crooked businessman, you know, reality TV show host that got elected POTUS on a fluke. And Russia's, you know, they've been involved with tampering with elections and election fraud, all kinds of stuff. They've done it in other countries where, you know, they get inside and hack them and, you know, flip things, and it's a big mess. And somehow or another,
wasn't this a long-term plan? Because Putin got upset that we dismantled Russia during the Cold War, divided them up into many countries. They were the USSR, United Soviet Socialist Republic, and now they are, divided up into their original Russia and other countries. And so this has been going on since the 80s. I watched Active Measures, I guess, about 2 months ago, so I don't remember it all. But and I need to take the time and watch it again because it's so powerful. I recommend you watch it 2 or 3 times. But I encountered the same resistance. It's like once you get programmed, there's a book called The God Spell or the God Virus. Once you get programmed with a belief system, like you're born as a Catholic or a Muslim or, a Jew and a Christian or whatever, and Mormon, and it's highly unlikely in the course of your life that you're going to convert to another religion if you've been indoctrinated into it religiously and culturally since you're in conception, right? But the few will, but it's just highly unlikely. So Trumpism is like a religion, and this is a cult, and people have been Jim Jones, and they're drinking the Kool-Aid. So from that perspective, it's not surprising that people, when they hear you, they just go, no. It's my God is better than your God, and my religion's better than. It's the only way in the light and the truth, and so that's what we're encountering here. But what do we do about it? So I'll let you continue your report because you've just watched it. So go ahead, continue with what you were saying. Fascinating.
Well, Vladimir Putin's role in the KGB was to work with Russian agents inside the USA to develop this active measures to try to destroy U.S. democracy from within. Now, the perception of the Trump supporters is that he's draining the swamp and getting rid of everybody and replacing them with people who aren't part of the deep state. But when you look at what he's actually been doing, like taking out Obama's nuclear physicist at the Department of Energy and installing know-nothing Rick Perry, and putting somebody who has no experience in education, Betsy DeVos, into charge of education. He's taken out the officials in just about every department within the government that serves the average citizen and replacing them with somebody that doesn't know anything about it so that he can control them. And that's called a kakistocracy, where the heads of each department are the least qualified and the least person you would want in there. And that's
what's that term? That's a new term. We need to have a dictionary on this thing. What's it called?
It's a kakistocracy.
Spell that.
And that Kakistocracy.
Okay, we'll have to put that up there. I'll put a Wikipedia definition or something.
Yeah, so a kakistocracy is where the most least qualified and unknowledgeable persons run every department in the government, and their only real overseer is the dictator or the cult leader, which would be Donald Trump himself. and he wants control over everything. I mean, you can see this in his behaviors. There's a lot of German historians and psychologists that have pretty much come out and said that he shares a lot of the same psychology as historical figures like Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler. And people think you're being hyperbolic, if you compare Trump to Hitler, but there's German historians that are making the same comparison. So it's not, way out there or anything. I mean, there's people in academia that there's the 37 psychologists that wrote Bandy Lee's book, The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. I mean, they identified the same set of personality disorders as some of these other people that have risen to power historically, such as the main one's malignant narcissism. That's a very dangerous personality disorder where everything's about them, and you can notice this in Trump's behavior where, everything is all about him. Even the recent election loss is all about him. He's golfing and whining and, just like a big baby while, he's saying that he won the election, just like a spoiled child, that just didn't want to accept reality. And this personality characteristic of malignant narcissism combined with, pathological lying, gaslighting, over-sexuality, serial adultery, it wound up into the least appropriate candidate for presidency that we've ever had. And I think that's going to be his legacy. If we can finally get rid of him, it's kind of like getting gum off the bottom of your shoe because he won't leave, And he's got very powerful forces behind him working for him. He weaponized the legal system long ago. And, back in 2004, there was a Russian oligarch, I don't want to mention the name, but he examined Trump's bankruptcies and just decided to start making loans. And, then, the whole money laundering thing, there's one Russian oligarch that bought one of Trump's properties for $95 million, which was double what it was actually worth. And that's one of the ways that they can launder money is to pay like double for something and just let it sit there and, just the money gets washed somehow. I'm not a financial expert, so I don't know the exact mechanics of it. But according to this documentary, Active Measures, this is being done all over the world and including the United States, through Trump's connections. When he married Ivana, the Czechoslovakian intelligence took note of that and thought it would be good. He had pressure back as far as 1988 to run for the presidency because Czechoslovakia thought it would be good for the Czech Republic if somebody who married a Czech woman became the president of the United States. So he's had people in the background, that are powerful in other areas of the world wanting him to run for president for quite some time now.
Wow, so this is an arranged marriage. They somehow set that up.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I don't know the mechanics of the marriage.
Or it's a possibility. Yeah, but
it
seems,
in the documentary it just said an unknown entity. They either didn't want to identify who the entity was or they don't know who was putting pressure on him to run for president back in 1988. But he's had powerful interests in other parts of the world that have wanted to use him, to get into place the highest office of the land, so that their economic goals could be met. One of the things is when he installed Rex Tillerson, he had a deal with one of the other Russian oligarchs for an Arctic oil deal that was worth about $1 trillion. So I read in the news recently, where Trump, before he leaves, is opening up oil drilling in the Arctic, so that probably has something to do with that deal. And it's all about people who have just more money than God, people that have billions and billions of dollars who have goals, and they're utilizing our president and the policies that he's implementing so that they can make money. And, they can get their sanctions lifted and they can, get oil deals. And I mean, it's all about big money. And I think, if we can get him out of office and all of this stuff, just bubbles forth like I think it will, people are going to be shocked, at the extent of the involvement.
Debra, you have any feedback, comments, questions? what Russell just presented?
Well, I find it interesting that we now have this massive hack across every department of the government, and Trump hasn't said a word, and they know it was done by the Russians.
We have this massive what? Say that again? I'm sorry, you broke up.
The computer systems across all platforms of the government in every department have been hacked by the Russians, and apparently they invaded the computer systems months ago, and it's gone undetected, probably because there's incompetent people in these departments. There's lax rules. Nobody works or does anything to shore up the security systems. And I'm not so sure Trump didn't have that door open for them and to allow them to do it. That's my suspicion based on everything that I've watched Trump do. And he hasn't said a word. And for a man who wants this job, frickin' act like it. All you do is golf, right? We've got, 300,000 people dead, right? And you're worried about the water pressure in shower heads. Like, really?
Yeah, it borders on the absurd. And, just to review Historic 2004, this is all going to sound really familiar. Are you ready for this?
Yes, we're ready.
Okay, Putin sees the Ukraine as part of Russia. And his whole goal is to build Russia, to get all these little annexes back a part of Russia so that he can rule over it. Well, in 2004, Putin and the KGB interfered in the Ukrainian election by poisoning the clean, fair, pro-Western democracy Viktor Yushchenko. Okay, he got poisoned, and his face was scarred and everything. And there was a female at the time named Yulia Tymoshenko who entered into Yushchenko's campaign, and she wound up in prison and tortured by the KGB. And Ukrainian intelligence detected Russian hacking of their election commission, trying to change the votes for Viktor Yushchenko and to their pro-Putin candidate. So both of their names are Victor, but Viktor Yanukovych, okay. Now, ignoring the reports of voter fraud, Ukraine declared Viktor Yanukovych the winner, and in the eyes of most Ukrainians, the election was stolen. Does this sound familiar?
Yeah,
Yulia Tymoshenko, okay, the woman that wound up in prison, began declaring on TV that the election was stolen. The Ukrainian Supreme Court declared a do-over for the election, and they annulled the election, and Viktor Yushchenko became president, making Yulia Tymoshenko prime minister. And then Viktor Yushchenko came to the U.S. and said the election was a choice between totalitarianism and democracy. So Putin, and they've been doing this stuff, for quite some time. Now, that brings up the specter of whether Russia could possibly have been able to tamper with the 2020 election. But I have a tendency to trust Christopher Krebs. He's an IT pro. And if he says that this was the most secure election in history, I'm sure Christopher Krebs was aware of this 2004 incident that Putin pulled and was trying to protect us from that. And one of the things that Christopher Krebs said before he got fired, or after he got fired, I don't remember, was that if the average American citizen realized how open we are right now, that we would be very disturbed about it. And then what happens? Boom, we get a big Russian cyber attack, that knocks out thousands of, government people. They hit government people, people in the media, average citizens. And he's turning out to be the biggest U.S. security breach in history. And people need to know about this. So, and his people are really reluctant to say anything going on because they care about their own careers. They want to keep in office. And right now they know if they say anything at all about Donald Trump, they're going to get fired. So they're just trying to hang through this mess. But I think, once this is over, if in fact, Biden gets inaugurated on January 20th, like he's supposed to, all this stuff's going to come out and people are just going to be shocked.
Yeah, so let's look at that. There was a YouTube that said that Trump isn't going to leave There's a comical thing meant to capture that, but I couldn't quite grab it. Where they're wheeling him out. That he's going to get evicted, and they just wheel him out. And they put him on a back of a trailer, of a truck, and they haul him away. But what happens on the 20th at noon of January?
Well,
if he
I
doesn't
think
leave.
Even earlier than that, what can happen? They're already garnering up support for this. I think it's on January 6th. I'm not certain, but when it goes to Congress, okay, Biden's been declared the winner by the Electoral College, but it has to be approved somehow by Congress, and they're garnering people who are going to object. And I think there's some procedure where if they get a Democrat objection and a Republican objection, they get like 2 hours, to discuss it, and they vote on it. So it's a long shot, but it's just one more anxiety factor, for those of us that want to oust him, because of what we realize about, how he got elected, and the propaganda was so thick, and people just didn't recognize it. Back in 2016, they had this Cambridge Analytica, which is a subsidiary of a country that called SCL that's linked directly to the Kremlin, and they did an experiment to see if they could figure out through thousands of Facebook users if they could use the information collected from Facebook users on how to manipulate election, and they certainly did that. I mean, I noticed that in the 2016 election. There was pictures of Trump and Jesus, and just really crazy things that just looked almost like humorous to me. And what was disturbing was that all my friends that were already on board with Trump just bought it hook, line, and sinker. And if you remember, there were people wearing T-shirts, "I'd rather be a Russian than a Democrat." And there was a white nationalist. There was a white nationalist organization down in Charlottesville, Virginia, that were chanting, "Russia is our friend. Russia is our friend." I mean, it's been really, really effective in targeting the far right. Now, next time, maybe they'll focus and target on the far left. But this time around, anyway, they targeted the NRA is basically an arm of the Russian propaganda mechanism. So is InfoWars. Back when Russia invaded Georgia, Alex Jones was spewing that Georgia invaded Russia, which was pure propaganda, coming from them. So there's a lot of people, media figures in the United States and big names that everybody would recognize that have either fallen for the propaganda or they're in on the propaganda for some reason. But the whole goal is with this active measures thing is just to create so much bitterness and tribalism in the United States, separating the right from the left, that everybody hates each other. So if some major thing happened, like Donald Trump's reinstalled for a second term, or they convince half the population that the election was stolen and then Biden's inaugurated, either way that goes, half the country is going to be pissed off. And, we may be in for some rough times after January 20th, depending on how serious the people on the right are about, causing problems. And right now, there's a lot of right-wing politicians that are acting as stochastic terrorism by asking if they would die for Donald Trump. And I've had people privately messaging me saying that, if I'm a patriot, then I'll stand up against a stolen election and I won't let this happen, So there's a lot of disinformation out there, and everybody's just struggling, to make heads or tails of it. And the rabbit hole goes so deep. I'll quote David Wilcock on this one. He says, "If you think you know what's going on, you don't." And I think that was the best thing that David Wilcock ever said.
Yeah. Deborah, what do you think about all this?
I think people have just abdicated their responsibility to themselves for the truth. Too many people get their news from Facebook and conservative media. They don't do their due diligence to find out the truth, and they want to be led around by the nose. And, I find these are the same people that believe in the Christian Bible, the evangelicals, who I think have hijacked the right. And, when you get into conversations with evangelicals about God or religion or the Bible, And, you start throwing facts at them and discrepancies, and it's like, well, you just have to believe and just take it on faith. I don't follow anything blindly. You know what I mean?
Right.
I question everything. I always have ever since I was a little girl. And if things don't make sense, I can remember being a little girl and questioning things we're being told in the Bible and asking my Bible study teacher or asking the pastor, and they just pat you on the head and, oh, little girl, you don't understand, and, tell you to go away. And these are the same people that are in the conservative movement on the right wing, and they want to be led around by the nose, and they're the same people that go leave it up to God. You abdicate responsibility to yourself, and you become a victim to life when you do things like that. I don't leave anything up to God. I leave it up to me, right? And I've done just fine. But, when I see something on the news from one media organization, I go and research it and check it out and, see what reporters have worked on it, what evidence they've discussed, and I wade through all the muck to figure out what's really going on. And my question to everyone who thinks this election was stolen, where's the proof? You don't have 1 ounce of proof.
Right.
Where's the proof? And if there was any proof, these judges would have accepted these cases. You have no proof. Stop watching Fox News. Stop watching One America News and do your due diligence to yourself and find out what the truth is. Because this country is on the verge of a civil war if people don't start getting to the truth and stop listening to these idiots. I got news for you. Donald Trump wouldn't die for you. Why would you die for him? This whole thing is a grift to get money. All of it is a grift to get money. If you are a registered Republican, you receive anywhere from 4 to 15 emails a day asking you for money, and that money is going into Donald Trump's pocket, right? He's raised over $200 million. If you read the fine print of those donation requests, unless your donation is over $5,000, it goes into the political action committee set up by him and his family. And that political action committee is allowed to spend that money any way it wants. That money has not gone towards the legal fight. That money has not gone towards the Senate races in Georgia. That money has gone into Donald Trump's pocket. And note this, 60 days before the election, the Trump campaign ran out of money. They ran out of money when it became apparent, when it was reported by the media, how much money was going into Brad Pascal, the campaign manager at the time, and in the Trump family's pocket. And rich people stopped donating to them because they weren't going to give them money to put in their pocket, right? And so that's why the campaign ran out of money. It's not the rich people that are donating to Donald Trump right now. It's all these small people who've been affected by COVID, who've been laid off. It's all of his fervent right-wing supporters. And I got news for you. He doesn't like you guys. He thinks you're disgusting. And those are the words that are directly out of his mouth. He said he was glad COVID came so he would not have to shake the hands of all these disgusting people. So why would you want to put your life on the line for a man like that? I'm passing the torch.
And that's a good question. It's like these people seem to be shooting themselves in their own feet. The GOP does not support, the average person, getting money in their pockets. It's like they're the reverse Robin Hood.
No.
They take from the poor and they give to the rich.
Well,
Robin
not
Hood.
only that, it's really Robin Hood. They
Robin
in
Hood,
this package, the GOP is allowing those direct payments to everybody at the expense of extended unemployment benefits. So you're willing to give everybody $600 or $1,200 instead of putting the money in the pockets that need it in the pockets of the people that need it most. Why not give everybody $1,200? Anybody who's employed and has a full-time job and hasn't been subjected to wage cuts, why should they get any money? They're doing just fine. Why are you not giving it to the people that are standing in these food banks that are about to lose their homes or about to be evicted from their apartments?
Well, I don't think anybody of a certain income rate are getting it. It's just the people that make under $75,000 a year are getting it.
Even
They're not giving it to all the millionaires.
Even if you make $75,000 a year, you don't need that payment. You don't need that payment if you're making $75,000 a year. If you are unemployed, you need that money. If you are about to get evicted, you need that money. If you are standing in the line of your local food bank, you need that money. Anyone that has a full-time job and has been fully employed at a full-time job throughout this pandemic, they do not need that money. So why would you give blanket money to people instead of putting it in the pockets of the people that need it most?
It's a basic minimum income philosophy. They're not going to spend it on, whatever. They're going to spend it on the needs, getting their needs met. And everybody's suffering. It's not just the people that are working or not working. It's affecting the entire economy. Okay, so we differ here. What do you think about the how that's coming down, Russ?
Well, one of the factors.
I like $600. I could use it, and I'm not working, but I'm on Social Security, and that's not a lot of money. And everything's gone up, and my income hasn't gone up, so they were thinking of raising it. But go ahead. Sorry about that, Russ. Your perspective.
Well, as I'm listening to Deborah, and she's talking about evangelicals and stuff, it got me thinking that one of the biggest things, in addition to weaponizing the legal system, is the reason that Trump got so much evangelical support is because of a Christian heresy known as prosperity theology, and there's a lot that goes along with that. Prosperity theology is the oldest con job in the world, where basically a priest who sets himself up as being close to God says, send me your money or send our ministry your money, and the windows of heaven will open up and bless your health and finances. And just like P.T. Barnum said, there's a sucker born every minute. These TV evangelists get millions and millions of dollars that way by getting on there and hawking for cash. And one of the biggest prosperity theologians on the planet just happens to be Donald Trump's spiritual advisor, Paula White. There's a lot of YouTube videos debunking this woman. And she was on there, prior to the election saying that angels from Africa were coming in and, that I see victory, and, went into the speaking in tongues thing. And it amazes me that all these evangelicals were praying for Trump's reelection and Biden won. So, I mean, what does that tell you? And the evangelicals that ascribe to the evangelicals that have ascribed to Donald Trump's grifting, like Deborah put it, are waking up. There's a Southern Baptist named Beth Moore who's very prominent. I forget exactly what state she's from, but she just wrote a tweet saying that this brand of nationalism is the opposite of Jesus' teachings. And we're talking about Trump, a man who openly celebrates all seven deadly sins. Not only is he not repentant, he openly celebrates them. And some of my Trump-supporting friends says, well, that just bonds me to him closer because, I break them all too. And I said, yeah, but the difference between a spiritual person and a non-spiritual person, both of them are aware of what good and evil is. But the spiritual person, being aware of these things, will try to minimize it. Will try to avoid it as much as possible. Whereas people like Anton LaVey that started the First Church of Satan back in 1966, and then Colonel Michael Aquino that started the Temple of Set, and Lucius Greaves that started the Satanic Temple recently, that are involved in putting the statues of Baphomet, wherever they try to install the Ten Commandments. Their philosophy is that Lucifer is the great liberator, that instead of feeling guilty about these deadly sins or whatever you want to call it, you should openly celebrate them. So they're into, if I sell you something, that means I'm smarter than you. One of the people that I talk to online a lot is fond of an author named Richard Green, I believe, or Robert Greene or Richard Green. And he's written two books, one on how to manipulate women into bed with you, and then the other one's about how to dominate other people. It's called The 48 Laws of Power. And he's one of the ones that are into this mindset, well, there's no difference between me and Trump. I mean, I do everything that he does. Everybody lies. Everybody commits adultery once in a while. Everybody does this. And that's what I tried to explain to them is, there's a difference between somebody who's aware of those things and tries to reject them and tries to live a better life than that, or tries to be kind to people, That's the spiritual path. And then the what you'd call the Luciferian or the satanic path or the negative higher density path is the ones that embrace all those things and say, hey, this is the human condition. I'm in the flesh, and I'm going to celebrate it. I'm going to openly celebrate all these things. So you got a guy that got elected president who says he doesn't like people who get captured. He prefers people that don't get captured. We've got the video of him mocking the person with arthrogryposis. And the Trump sycophants will say, well, he does that same gesture, other places, And it's like they just deny the obviousness of it, that he was just overtly making fun and mocking a reporter that had a physical condition that he was making fun of, and he makes fun of women, he makes fun of their appearance, and guys, Trump's base of support is basically white males between the age of 50 and 64. And they love him. You can hear him at the Trump rallies. Oh, I want to have as many women as Trump has. And it's like that's their dream. It's like to have a lot of money and to be good with the ladies. So he's a big cult hero. To men in that age bracket, white, non-college educated males, age 50 to 64, are the crux of Trump support. And they're the ones that fell hard. They love him to death, and they're flying the flags. And you go to a county fair in the last 4 years, and the Trump booths are selling trinkets. They got a big 6-foot cardboard cutout of the guy. He's treated like a rock star at these rallies, and that's not the way our presidency is supposed to be. And I've got people on the Trump supporting side of the fence saying, how could Trump have lost? His rallies are so big. Well, if you look at California is solidly blue, but right before the election, they had a Trump rally with 10,000 attendees. So the Trump supporters are looking at that as, how can somebody with 10,000 rally attendees lose an election? And I said, well, Till Lindemann of Rammstein, the lead singer of Rammstein, who was a basket weaver before he became a lead singer for the band, drew 1 million concert goers one time. It was like the biggest concert attendance in the history of the world. Mm-hmm. But I don't think Till Lindemann should run for president. There's a big difference between treating somebody like a rock star and being involved in a cult. And in a way, rock stars are sort of like treated like cult leaders, But Trump has become a cult of personality and sort of like a rock star figure to these people. And it's just not the way it's supposed to be. And they're bewildered when I say, if and when Biden gets elected, like he's supposed to on January 20th, you won't catch me at a Biden rally. I'm not going to be wearing a blue baseball cap. I'm not driving around in my pickup truck flying Biden flags and screaming Biden out my window. I just want him to hire professional, qualified people in each of the departments of government that know their job and have experience at it, that are good people, and just leave us alone. The government should just do their job and leave us alone. Maybe, every couple of months give a State of the Union address and come on TV for that. Right. But for the last 4 years, we've just had the oxygen sucked out of our psyche by this guy from his constant tweeting. And every single day, it's like, I got to turn in TV so see what stupid thing this guy has said or done, And that's just not the way it's supposed to be at all.
Hey, I want to respond to that.
Go ahead.
Because I had a friend who said that to me. He sent me this post yesterday showing, how could have 80 million people have voted for this guy when he did some kind of online speech or something, and only 4,000 people attended. And I responded to him. I said, you misunderstood why people voted. I said, they weren't voting for Biden. They were voting against Trump. They are so disgusted by him and his policies that they want him out of office. And your only legitimate option for that to happen was by voting for Biden. Now, the fact that we had over 156 million people come out and vote, which is the largest turnout ever, spoke volumes. Half the country despises this man, despises everything he stands for. And these are usually people that probably would have never had voted had there been two viable candidates, that were decent human beings and would have been a decent president. And I'm with you. I just want Biden to hire talented, experienced people, which he did today, by the way, Native American got named as the head of the Department of the Interior. Now, how long in coming is that, right? That Native Americans in this country will finally have a voice in government, in the most important department in this country to them, right? He just hired an African-American gentleman who's the head of the EPA, I think in either North Carolina or Georgia, as the head of the EPA in the federal government, where communities of color are hit more by pollution issues than any other community in the country. So again, he's giving people voice in this government who never would have had a voice before, and I applaud him for that. And you're right, Trump did nothing but find the worst person possible and put it in charge of every department. And the policies of this government read like a bullet point of, Russian preferences and propaganda. The 2016 Republican platform was dictated by the Russians.
Exactly.
Yes.
Putin hates
and his whole policies
NATO and
were
the EU.
to undermine. Let me say something. I haven't said anything for a while. I've been quiet too long. Okay. They have a report that they intentionally wanted to spread the virus to achieve herd immunity, and their whole policies was give it to the young and the children and the people out there, which that's impossible because you expose all those people. They expose the rest of the population. I've been saying since it started that your intentions are made manifest by your results. We have over 306,000 people dead as of yesterday. I think we're losing 3,000-4,000 people a day. We're going to have over 500,000 dead by February or something like that. I don't have it exact. But this was intentional. And why? Because, Russia wants to step in. And maybe I heard there's China on one border and Russia on the other, and they want to start World War III. I don't know, but it's like, and then there's maps of the post-America after the Civil War, too. So this whole thing was stochastic terrorism, and it started back with the family and the breakfast prayer, which was to use different policies like the GLBTQ policy and the abortion policies to start dividing not only the country but the world. And they did it with the breakfast prayer, which was defying the separation of church and state, and the abortion issue is just a religious issue that's being shoved down our throats. The abortion issue is a religious, spiritual issue. So I'm going to talk for a minute because I want to talk. So we have things that are happening here, like Mar-a-Lago does not want Trump to go there. So we have several. The former NHGOP chair announced that she's leaving the GOP. There's another fellow who said he's leaving the GOP because the GOP doesn't stand for Republicans anymore. It's Trumpism. Trumpism, we might get rid of Trump, but how do we get rid of Trumpism, which has basically changed the whole entire world? And Trumpism is Nazism. It's a continuation of a policy that's been going on where periodically the systems erode, and what emerges but a dictator. We keep going round and round and round every generation. And because there's so much time and space between this, we tend to forget because the generations are dying and new people are coming in. And we've got to look at the bigger picture and step outside of the matrix and see what is going on, that these people are so easily duped, controlled, manipulated, because they did it in the 40s. In the 30s, they marched after Hitler. And to me, and this can be in my humble opinion, and I'm not afraid to say it, Trump is like the modern incarnation of Hitler. But what's going to happen? Are we really going to get him out of office? Is this just a trial run? Maybe they put this doofus in there, Trump, who's an idiot, to fail. So the next time they will have done a trial run and they will succeed, and then the entire world will just be variations of China, Russia, and then the Americans will be nothing different and nothing better. back to the panel. What do you think of what I just said?
Well, the fact that Trump fired the cybersecurity chief, Christopher Krebs, and then right after that we get hit with a Russian cyber attack, affecting thousands. I mean, that just ascertains the statement that he made that if the American citizens knew how much danger we were in with the cybersecurity being breached, we'd be disturbed about it. And then, pow, we get hit. I mean, Trump and all of his shenanigans are really placing all of us at risk, for hacking jobs and getting taken down from within, which is their goal. And it doesn't surprise me that Russia is funding both the far left and the far right, because the goal is to create these tribal divisions or even civil war. I mean, nobody would like a civil war more than Putin, because he sees the United States as a threat to his own power, because we put sanctions on him, and Trump wanting to get out of all these globalist groups, like the Paris Climate Accord and the EU or NATO and all that. I mean, that's just feeding right into Putin's goals, because globalism is a threat to Putin, because once you have several nations allied together, that gives him less of an inroad to get in there and take somebody down from within, and gain more power that way. It's just all about power and money. And it's sad that this three-dimensional world that we're embedded in attracts psychopaths, who are able to manipulate the masses. I mean, the average IQ in the United States is 100, and that means half the people are lower than that, and they've all got iPhones. It's like, so they're really easily manipulated by stupid propaganda that the people on the other side of the 100 IQ spectrum would easily recognize as disinformation, but the people on the left-hand side of it don't, and they just fall for it, and they just, there's this groupthink consensus that everybody's thinking is true that could be just absolutely, completely false. And I don't know what the Republicans would have done if Barack Obama had taken 5 kids by 3 baby mamas and stuffed them all in top government positions. I imagine they would have been apoplectic over that. Now, granted, I really think Ivanka has a good head on her shoulder, and Jared has some good organizational skills, but that doesn't take away from the fact that they don't belong there. I mean, you're not supposed to elect a president who just brings his entire family into top security clearances with no qualifications, no experience, zip-ola, because he's more comfortable working with his family than he is strangers, because he's paranoid. I mean, he's been real careful about firing lackeys, firing anybody that criticizes him in any way, and that's what dictators do. But fortunately, along with this book that Dr. Bandy Lee wrote, The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump, back in 2016, there's a new book out written by evangelicals called The Spiritual Danger of Donald Trump, and there's about 30 pastors who have finally recognized that the persona of Donald Trump is the anti-Jesus. I mean, it's just the exact opposite of Jesus' teachings in the New Testament, and so they're all given their perspective on that they need to get back to the original gospel of being kind to your neighbor and, treating everybody as if they're you in another form. Whatever you do, the least of these, you've done unto me. And they're going back to the original teachings and renouncing Trump as the antithesis of this. And that's a good sign, that Trump comes along, he's a good charismatic person. And there's also a superstition within Judeo-Christian circles that God's blessing is upon the rich and the beautiful. And that goes back to ancient superstitions that deformity is a sign of the curse of God, and that if a person's wealthy, then that means the blessing of God is upon them. So here comes somebody along who, for his age, he's rather attractive, and then he's got this much younger, attractive wife. He's a billionaire, and the evangelicals, started salivating, and thinking, God's blessing must be upon this man, or he wouldn't have gotten this far in life as he's gotten. And nothing could be farther from the truth, because, as we said earlier about him weaponizing the legal system and manipulating bankruptcy law, I mean, he's basically gotten where he is by just manipulating other people. He was broke at one point after his casino went under, and then Russian oligarchs started lending him money, and then Jeffrey Zucker, that owns CNN of all things, hired him for The Apprentice and paid him $200 million to do that. So I imagine it's very addictive. When you get into the realm of having millions or billions of dollars to your name, it probably changes your psyche, and you really think a lot more of yourself than you really should, and that contributes to this smirk that he always wears. I mean, I notice a lot of these really, really super rich, they have this same smirk on their face, like this self-satisfaction that they just exude on everybody. And some people see that and say, God, I want to be like that, And then others like myself are just, we want to gag. I mean, we're just so repulsed by it. And so the religious world is waking up slowly but surely. I say better late than never.
Yeah. Do you have anything you want to say right now, Debra? Passing it to you.
Debra?
Uh-oh. Did she drop off?
Did we lose her?
Let's see. I was going to see. It looks like we lost her. Okay, let me talk. Maybe she'll call back in. Oh, let me go back to what I was about to read. 1 second. Oh, sorry. I have to navigate between these screens. So one of the real reasons that Trump is upset is because wait, let me go over here. He has his book out. Obama has his out, and
he's super jealous of Obama.
And he's super jealous of Obama because Obama wrote that. Not only is it a well-written book, it's articulate, it's heart-centered. Obama is sharing what happened to him and what it was like, and it's such an honor to be the president. It's a 768-page memoir, and it's the first of two, and it covers Obama's initial 4 years in office. It's well on course to become the best-selling presidential memoir of all time, and he shattered all previous records on the first day of sale last month. And so this is the voice of Barack Obama, the voice most of us come to know so intimately after years of listening to his speeches. It's an unmistakable voice, clear, honest, and above all human, with a genuine quality of humility that is impossible to feign or duplicate. And so, let's see. So in the final days of this disastrous presidency, millions of Americans throughout the country will be reading a memoir written by someone with a fundamental decency that Donald Trump could never achieve in his wildest Twitter-fueled fantasy. Not only would Trump have been intellectually incapable of producing such an introspective self-examination of his tenure, but it is already obvious that he will never will have the kind of national level respect that Obama commanded and continues to receive after his 2 terms in office had ended. So, he's jealous. He'll never write a memoir like this. I mean, what's he going to talk about? The wall? I mean, and then because because Biden, who was Obama's vice president, got elected, that is a further statement. Like, we're coming back to, sanity away from this craziness. Trump never had a policy agenda beyond acting as a rubber stamp for whatever the political right needed in order to stay in power, and thus continued to enjoy the limelight because he always felt insecure about following in Obama's footsteps, and because he is in fact an out-and-out racist. The only thing that mattered to him was to get Obama out of his head, and he tried and failed repeatedly to repeal the Affordable Care Act, to denigrate the achievements of Obama. And he even started before Obama got into office with the birtherism movement. So that was one thing that stands out. What do you think about that? Any comments? I'm going to try to get Debra back online while you're speaking. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, one of the techniques that Putin loves to do when he's wanting to install somebody that's pro-Kremlin or pro-Moscow or pro-Russian is to denigrate through slander any of the opposition. And we were inundated with that type of stuff that Trump pushed. He pushed the birtherism lie that was saying that our first African-American president wasn't even an American citizen. We basically carded the poor guy like a common criminal. And there's other rumors that he was a secret Muslim. He's a non-Christian. He belongs to Black Liberation Theology. He's gay. His wife, Michelle, is a man. You know, and there are people today, and I hate to say this, but there are people that are in the more prominent spheres of ufology that still believe all this stuff. And it comes out through little comments that they'll make, like if you look close at Michelle, you can see the hairs on her chin and stuff. I mean, that's just pure Russian propaganda to denigrate somebody. And the same thing happened with Hillary. Putin knew that Hillary had his number. I mean, as Secretary of State, I mean, she knows all about what Putin's doing. She knows about the oligarchs. She knows about the money laundering. She knows about all of it. And he did not want her to win. So he definitely infused the United States through trolls and Cambridge Analytica methods, to manipulate social media and target people who are susceptible to right-wing propaganda to get Trump elected. And he almost failed. I mean, she won the popular vote by 3 million, and Trump only got into the presidency by 70,000 votes in 3 counties. You know, so it was just a very unfortunate mistake that somebody that's just about as close to a Russian mole, according to Malcolm Nance, as you can get, actually made it to the highest office of the land. So now we're trying to dismantle this whole mechanism and put professional people back in every office and have somebody that has some humaneness. And that's another Russian-based propaganda slander, this whole sex trafficking thing. You know, it started with Pizzagate, and then you got the QAnon, which is pure Russian propaganda. QAnon is based in Moscow now. And what it tried to do was demonize half the country that identify as Democrats as being satanic, baby-eating child sex traffickers. And I've experienced this online talking to people where if you say any criticism of Trump at all, then they come back at you and say, well, you must be a child sex trafficker or a pedophile. I mean, it's really, really successful propaganda. And that's the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard. I mean, most of the Democrats I know are college-educated professionals that don't mind their money going to help people that are less fortunate than themselves. And they want things like universal health care and education and so forth. But they're definitely not pedophiles or involved with sex trafficking. I mean, that's just pure slanderous BS, you know, that's being slung out there. And the fact that the right is using pictures of Biden with showing affection to male children at a funeral and trying to say he's a pedophile, you know, that's just off the chart ridiculousness.
Yeah. Debra, you're back.
I am back.
Got her. I called you.
Yeah, I tried to call you guys a million times. I think somebody didn't like our conversation, right?
Yep, let's get rid of that, Debra. She's saying the truth. Okay, what do you want to add to the conversation? We're at the first hour, so let's keep going until we exhaust ourselves. Go ahead.
I agree. You know, you say anything, you speak facts to people that support Trump, and they just come back at you with all these ridiculous accusations. And it's a shame that they're falling for all this deception. And it quite possibly could rip apart this country because I seriously believe we're sitting on the brink of civil war, just like we were back in the 1800s.
Well, I'd like to know how that's going to work because I don't have a uniform.
We don't have a uniform.
How's anybody going to know who to shoot at?
Well, you know,
they are
ask all the Trump supporters.
Yeah, they have their own kind of uniforms. The MAGA hat is one. If you don't have a MAGA hat, they'll kill you.
Designate a day where if you're on the Patriot side, you have a red MAGA hat, and if you don't have your red MAGA hat, you get a bullet. Is that the way it's going to go?
That's how it's coming. Yep. Well, apparently they're able to track down the people that worked on the polls, and they're going in front of their houses and terrorizing their children. So they might be able to track down all the Democrats in the neighborhood and come and start. They come for me. I mean, Nazi Germany, they came for the Jews, and they came for this and that. So there's a way of they're patriots, which are the only true patriots are the Republicans. They might start saying, hey, I've got some Democrats on my block here, and start doing some local KKK type things and surround the Democrats because they're armed to the gills. And then Trump put out a decree and says, make sure you have your Second Amendment materials on hand, not only food and water, but, so it's like they're planning something there. So it's a good question.
Well, I
How
have
will
one
they
for you. Did you see the picture of the Proud Boys in their kilts? Did you see the picture of the Proud Boys in the kilts that they wear?
Oh, they wear kilts.
No,
So one of the uniforms of the Proud Boys is one of their T-shirts along with a kilt. Well, it turned out the kilt company is owned by someone from the LGBTQ community, and they didn't even know that. So how stupid are they?
Yeah. Well, the order that Trump gave to them to stand down and stand by, I think right now the reason that we're not seeing any more violence from the right than we are, just a skirmish here, a few people stabbed here and there, just little stuff, is because of that order, because they still have a hope that Trump's going to get reinstalled for a second term. And I think it's only when the realization just sinks in solidly that Biden's going to get inaugurated that we're going to be in a window of danger. I don't want to predict violence, but there's a window of danger, and we'll find out, I have a friend that is in Turkey right now. He's staying there for 2 or 3 months because he thinks, it's all going to hit the fan here.
So what about that January 6th vote? Has anybody done the analysis on that? Can that really happen? That someone just protested and then they have to vote and they – go ahead, Deborah. What do you know about that?
You have to have the support of both. You have to have the support of both the House or the Senate to stop that. And that's not going to happen. You don't have the support of the House and the Senate.
Does it have to be the whole
it has
or
to be
just
the entire
an individual?
No, it has to be a majority of the House and a majority of the Senate, and you don't have it. You don't have it. That's the reality.
Yeah.
And our Constitution says that a new president starts January 20th, right? There's no ifs, ands, or buts to it. So what will happen is the Secret Service or possibly one of our Special Forces teams will go in and clear the Trumps out if they refuse to leave. It's not optional. They have to leave.
Well, what about Melania? She says, I'm out of here. Do you think she's going to divorce Donald?
No.
Well,
she apparently has an agreement till the end of the month. But go ahead, somebody.
I wouldn't know anything about what's inside Melania's head. I mean, she basically, enticed the married man to leave his wife and marry her. So, I mean, there's a mistrust on my part. I don't care for people that do that. I mean, you should acknowledge other people's marriages, and stay away from married guys, especially if you're
I agree.
Sexy and you provide you're a temptress. You know you're going to be tempting the guy. If he's happily married, leave the guy alone. It's hard enough. Life's hard enough without stuff like that surfacing.
Right. So what were you going to say, Deborah? You were saying something.
This woman she knew exactly who she married. You know what I mean?
She knew.
She married him for a reason. She knew. And this is a woman who has not wanted to carry any of the responsibilities of being a first lady and has done nothing but complain about it. So, good riddance to her. You were a lousy first lady. I'm glad you're out of the White House. And you and your grifter family will be gone. Thank God.
I bet Jackie Kennedy's upset from her from the grave. for uprooting her
Yep,
rose
turned
trees
over
or whatever
grave.
she did.
Absolutely.
That's crazy.
And get
trees and she put in a tennis court or something.
No,
yeah, go
no,
ahead.
they ripped it out. They put in a lot of cement and some bushes that don't flower, right? And we have this pandemic going on and 300,000 people dying, and your focus was doing a new tennis pavilion. That goes to show you what her priorities are.
Yeah,
right.
And a lot of the things that I've heard is, they give Melania a pass, but on shows like on Fox News and stuff, they're making fun of Dr. Jill Biden's doctorate degree, saying that you shouldn't call yourself a doctor unless you're an actual medical doctor. Tucker Carlson, said her doctorate's not any better than Dr. Pepper. So it's like the slander's already coming for somebody that's done everything right in life, and they give a pass, to what in my parents' generation, they'd call a floozy or a homewrecker. It's like the conservatives have changed.
Well, what is it with this whole bully attitude and name-calling attitude anyway? It's like, to me, it's just so disgusting. It's like so barbaric. Why do these people end up running our country? It's embarrassing. It's like, your Uncle Bob that was, a redneck who was acting like a creep, right? This is what we have.
Well,
we have these disgusting, embarrassing people in the White House. And one, they're all incredibly embarrassing, and they're representing our country. No wonder the United States has lost any credence in the world, and we're backing this and voting for this. And so, I don't understand. I would never vote for Trump for just the first thing. He was molesting women, and the second thing, he was a racist. But add the 500,000 things he's done in the last 4 years. There's like no way. I would never vote for Trump if he was the only person to vote for. I just wouldn't vote. And so my vote is no more Trump and no more Trumpism. But how do we get rid of it? And what's the best way we can proceed? So hopefully we can get through this. So I'm glad to hear your report that it looks like we can get through this, inauguration. And of course, Trump is planning his own event the same day to try to, what a petty human being.
Vindictive.
To try to destroy, vindictive. Oh my God.
Yeah, Trump's somebody that was
would
born.
like him to go. Go ahead.
He's born with a silver shovel in his mouth. He's never been told no in his whole life. He's exploited other people his whole life, and this is just a big slapdown. And he can't handle it. He's a big man baby with a pacifier in his mouth, crying. He can't handle the idea that he lost the election. And he's making everybody suffer for it.
So what articles do you have for us, Deborah? Did you send me anything, everything in your list?
I have. Let me bring up my Aquarian radio folder and take a look.
Okay.
How about the interesting information that came out about the poisoning of Alexei Navalny, right? The Soviet dissident.
Tell us about that. Yeah, what happened there?
So the media got involved and did an investigation and determined that there were, what's the new name? It's not the KGB anymore, right? It doesn't have a new name for their security agencies. Anyways, it was a team of them that had been following him, waiting for the opportunity to poison him. The press basically proved that the Russians poisoned him. They named names. They named their travel arrangements. They named details. They did a very extensive investigation, and they directly connected it to the KGB or whatever whatever form it currently is in, and Putin. Now, it also came out that Putin has Parkinson's disease. I'm praying that's true.
Oh.
I couldn't think of a better end for such an evil man.
Well, there's also an American think tank called the Center for National Interest that has close ties to the Kremlin and a central role in creating Trump's speeches. And every one of them are full of Russian propaganda. they push this whole idea that Trump is for peace and Hillary is for war. And, they really did a good job of getting somebody in there that would align the country according to the goals of Moscow. And it's not just with that. I mean, we've talked about that Netflix documentary, The Family, where Russian agents are infiltrating the National Prayer Breakfast, and they're hanging out with these fundamentalist Christian Republicans and trying to manipulate the politicians to the goals of Moscow. I mean, they've done a really good job. You got to hand it to them. If they have 1,000 agents in the United States that are operating and they're infiltrating the National Prayer Breakfast, and they've elected a president that has so many extensive ties with the Russian mafia, it's crazy. The whole situation's crazy. I just hope we can get through it without a lot of damage.
Yeah.
One thing that came out this week is Congress did pass. They either did or are on the verge of passing a bill that eliminates shell corporations. That all companies now will have to state who their owners are. Good. And shell companies were the biggest facilitator of the money laundering. Because often properties are bought with shell companies, and there's layer upon layer of shell company. And now they can't. When you go to buy property, you can't hide who the owner's going to be. So that'll cut down on a lot of the money laundering. And also, a lot of Donald Trump's entities are owned by shell companies. So it'll be very interesting to see how that will play out. And then we've got New York State, who's going to go after the Trump family and
Letitia
going
James.
to go after yes, Letitia James, I love you. Let me just say that. And Cyrus Vance Jr., you're questionable because you used to be a Trump supporter and donated to his campaign and let his children off in a previous grift that they got caught for. So we'll see if he carries through. But based on how the Trump administration has treated New York throughout all of this, they're not going to let that man walk away quietly.
Oh, no. With all the things that have been going on at Trump Towers, for decades, I think Letitia James has just got it all stacked up. And that's probably why Trump feels like a cornered badger. He knows what's coming. If he no longer has the protection from the presidency, it's going to open him. All this stuff that we're talking about is going to come out. It's going to be common knowledge. More and more people, both Democrats and Republicans that are in the know of all this stuff, are going to breathe a big sigh of relief and probably make some speeches and say, look, this is what's been going on. And it's not going to make a lot of people happy.
So how are they going to get him and his family to New York to go through these trials? Don't they have to extradite him from Florida? And Florida probably will just, that governor there loves Trump. He'll probably give him some kind of haven and won't let. What do you think will happen there? Any ideas?
Oh, he might vacate to Moscow and live there. Who knows?
See,
Thank you. I've been predicting that for the last few months. He's going to be on the first plane to Moscow.
Fantasy that 12/21/20 will have the extraterrestrials come out, and then they'll take Trump and his family and take him over to the Martian underground base that they talked about recently with the Israeli generals said that Trump knows about the space program and there's a base underneath Mars. Wouldn't that be fun? Get rid of them that way. Send us to Mars Botany Bay colony.
Another thing involved in the information war is something called the genetic fallacy. A lot of my right-wing Trump-supporting friends are convinced that anything that appears on what they call MSM, mainstream media, is fake. And it's like, I'm sorry, but CNN and ABC and MSNBC and all these MSM news outlets have thousands of people with varying levels of credentials that you can listen to. The words come out of their mouth. It doesn't matter, what platform they're using. It's them and their thoughts. I mean, I've got one friend that thinks that every single person that appears in an interview on any of the MSN channels is CIA. And that's not even reasonable to believe that. Because you've got political historians, professors, just doctors, people from various walks of life that are on interviews on all these stations that we have access to. And even people like William Barr, when he said there is no significant voter fraud, they'll say, well, that's MSM. I said, yeah, it might have been on an MSM platform, but it's William Barr talking. I mean, unless they're using a deep fake video where the computer cloned him, and it's a fake person talking, I can listen to William Barr himself and his own flapping lips say there is no significant voter fraud. And then Christopher Krebs, I mean, nobody's a more knowledgeable IT professional and cyber expert than Christopher Krebs, and he said it's the most secure election in history. So I'm pretty convinced that we weren't hacked by Russia, we weren't hacked by anybody, that with Christopher Krebs overseeing the whole entire operation, we're in pretty good shape this time, because Trump actually hired Christopher Krebs to address foreign interference in 2016, ironically. So, here he is, a Trump appointee, saying with his own mouth and his own brain that the election's secure, but because he's on an MSM platform, they reject it. Everything that they hear on MSM, right. And it seems like they're all into this alternative research, on their internet sites. And there's an alternative reality forming on these right-wing news sites like Parler, which is funded by the Mercers. He's a hedge fund billionaire that funded Brexit in England. He funded Parler, and then you've got OAN.
He also
Newsmax.
funded Cambridge Analytica.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean, you got a funder of Brexit and Cambridge Analytica funding a free speech social media platform where anybody can say anything. And so all the people that feel hurt over Trump's loss, are flocking to Newsmax, OAN, and Parler, where there's this alternative universe where Trump won the election by a landslide and he's going to be installed for a second term. So, I mean, delusions, one of the things I learned working on mental health facilities as an occupational therapist is that when you confront a schizophrenic person about a delusion, you might get punched. I mean, they don't react very well to, and there's certain methods that you have to use, to avoid an adverse reaction from somebody that suffers from a delusion, and you can't just rudely pop that delusion and prove it to them, or you're likely to get hit. So, I mean, we've got a delicate thing to do, because all the people that have gone to OAN and Newsmax and Parler are living in an unreal fantasy world.
But they can create a fantasy world that becomes powerful. So powerful
right.
becomes the operating system for the masses. Let's just take Christianity and the Muslims and the Jewish. So there's a religion, and you start getting around it, whether it's true or not, and you give it power, you give it energy, and it becomes the belief system for 2 billion people, 2.5 billion people. So here we have Trumpism, and I really wonder what percentage of all those people who voted for Trump are actually these QAnon and the delusional right-wing ring nuts, conspiracy maniacs, right? Conspiracy nuts, right? So what percentage of the 72 million believe in these conspiracies? And
50%.
So it's really good to. So 50% of the 72 million. That's a lot of people believe in these conspiracies. 35 million people believe in these conspiracies. I mean, do they believe the earth is flat, too? I mean, it depends. Whatever they put out there, they can gather enough witnesses and testimonials and fake doctors and scientists to say, this is the way and the light and the truth, and this is why you should believe it. And so they've created that. I have an article here. It says, one of the questions clinicians have been asking is, what is the extent to which Trump believes his lies? And this is a man that blurts out his feelings around the clock in whatever medium is available, is whether or to what degree he is conscious of his lies. Chait goes on to ask the question mental health experts only can speculate is he a sociopathic, liar, delusional, or both? And a point in favor of delusional comes via CNN, which reports that Trump not only insists he actually won the 2020 election, but has maintained at times that he will not vacate the premises on January 20th when his term ends. In this moments of deepest denial, he reports Trump has told some advisors in his moments that he will refuse to leave the White House on Inauguration Day, only to be walked down from that ledge. And this is no joking matter if he wasn't in fact joking. And so They had looked up delusional disorder, previously called paranoid disorder, is a type of serious mental illness called psychosis, in which a person cannot tell what is real from what is imagined. The main features of this disorder is the presence of delusions, which are unshakable beliefs in something untrue. People with delusional disorder experience non-bizarre delusions, which involve situations that would occur in real life, such as being followed, poisoned, deceived, conspired against, or loved from a distance. Anyway, et cetera, et cetera. But our society appears to be somewhat delusional. And I'm, on this chat, and they're going, have you ever tuned into what they're saying? It's frightening. They are on a different planet. I tuned into Hannity, and I endured it. I listened, and I went, I couldn't take it. I had to sign off. I went, oh, my God, this is frightening. These people believe this stuff, and they're acting out on it, and they're calling for people to do a coup. And so that's what was in the news lately, is about this attempted coup with over 100 Congress people and all these, and they attempted to take over the United States and put Trump in office, even though he was not elected. So if that were to happen, and you said there's one more chance, but it's unlikely, then this country's over. It's done for.
Yep.
So, okay. So we're running out of time here. Well, we have a half an hour we can do. What would we like to focus on in this last part of the show?
Well, you were talking about earlier, Janet, about psychopaths rising to power. And this is a very, very old problem. I've used this quote before, but I'll say it again. Titus Livy from 25 BC, one of his quotes is, as nature would have it, the man that speaks in his own interest is more popular with the crowds than the man that speaks for the common good. I mean, they had people that were observing this evil tribunes, surfacing in Rome, as far back as BC. So it seems to come with the territory, is that the people who are narcissistic, malignantly narcissistic, who have Dunning-Kruger syndrome, which is an exaggerated sense of your own competency, there's nothing more dangerous than an idiot who thinks he's a genius. And these people get into office, they rise to power, and there's a bunch of them in political office right now that are just dumb as a box of rocks. I mean, you can tell everything they say is just ridiculously stupid, and here people voted for them. I mean, our political system is such that, you got a 50-50 shot. When I went down to vote for Joe Biden, half the people here locally, I didn't know who was on the ticket. So you just, sometimes I'd vote, for the female to give them a chance, or for this guy, if it has to do with money. Sometimes I voted for the local Republicans because they're fiscally conservative, or supposed to be, and it's like, it's a crapshoot. So any old Tom, Dick, and Harry can run for Congress or run for office, and you got a 50-50 shot of getting elected. That's crazy.
Yeah. Okay, Deborah, what would you like to say? What would you like to report on? Any other articles?
Let me take a look. Well, did you hear about the vaccine shortage that's going on?
No.
Okay.
There were supposed to be shipments this week to the states. They were told last week what their allotment would be, and then all of a sudden they were told they're not getting that, and it's like half of what they were expecting. And when they questioned the federal government claimed that was all the vaccine that they had to distribute. And then Pfizer, the gentleman who I believe was the head of the FDA at one time, Scott Gottlieb, who now sits on the board of Pfizer, basically called the government out and said, that's a lie. You have millions of doses that you have not shipped out. And they've been keeping track of what the government's been shipping. And so now the government is sitting on millions of doses that they're not going to send to the states. And I'm interested to know why.
Well, there's also a lot of disinformation about the COVID-19, and there's people with doctor in front of their name pushing this stuff, that it changes your DNA. And an mRNA vaccine does not change your DNA. It does not go into the nucleus of the cell at all. It stays in the cytoplasm, and it's teaching your cells how to make the surface spike protein of the coronavirus so that your body will produce antibodies to it. So if you do get exposed to COVID-19, you've already got the antibodies to fight it. I mean, that's how an mRNA vaccine works. But there's several people out there that are creating these viral videos that are saying that it fundamentally changes your DNA. It's a depopulation program. It's the final solution. It's going to give you HIV. There's just so much disinformation about this vaccine.
I know. But think about this. If the virus was genetically created in a lab, and it's got the nanobots that when you catch it, it'll start changing you genetically, and the vaccine has the nanobots that'll change you genetically, then you're doomed either way, right? Because they're saying it's all genetically created and it's all going to, change humanity, and we're going to go into this transhumanist, Borg state. And so I said, well, bring it on, right? Either way. So, let's talk about the vaccine. My thought for the conspiracy theorists is, what would you do if you passed out, somebody put you in an ambulance, took you to the hospital, they said, okay, we can either ventilate you, put the tube down your throat, and you may never wake up again, or give you a vaccination. What would you conspiracy theorist people do? Would you take the vaccine, which would save your life, or would you let them intubate you? What would you guys do?
I'll take the vaccine. I mean, I've had lots of them. I've got a dime-sized scar on my shoulder from a mandatory smallpox vaccine when I was a kid, and it eradicated smallpox. And when I entered the occupational therapy field back in 1997, I had to get a whole round of vaccines. Hepatitis B. I have to have an annual tuberculosis test where they prick you and they infect you with the TB a little bit to see if your body reacts to it. I mean, it's just, it's just part of science and part of working in the healthcare industry. Right now my wife still works at a nursing home, so she's probably going to be required to take the vaccine if she wants a job.
And I think that's what's going to happen. And I would take the vaccine rather than get intubated and maybe not come out from it. And I've had lots of vaccines throughout my life. I went to kindergarten in the 20th century, and that's what we did. We couldn't get into school. And it's very logical that this vaccine, that they were required for all the healthcare workers and frontliners and people who work in nursing homes and people who come to, I imagine that near future here, if you end up in the emergency room, you got to get your vaccine just to come in the door, or don't come into our hospital, right? So that'll probably be mandatory. This is not going to end with COVID. Vaccines come around, go around, and come around again. And we have a huge population, and we're not doing things very conscious. We're not, producing healthy food. We're polluting the environment. And maybe this is one way that God, source, the Illuminati, or somebody calls the population. And maybe if we just start being kinder to each other and kinder to our planet, we might not have all these horrendous things. But these plagues have been around since the Anunnaki. There's the story of the, Pandora's box around the year 1000. We have the Grim Reapers came to the fields and sprayed the fields with these scythes, and next day the village next to it would have the plague. And so the stories of these plagues, I guess the major Black Plague was around for 400 years. It just kept cycling around and around, and it would go and it would wipe out a bunch of people, and they'd reproduce, and they would come back around again. I guess it kept going around the world. So I think we have to start thinking about this differently. What are your thoughts, Deborah?
Sorry, I was on mute. No, I'm
okay.
I'm here. What are my thoughts? Well, I will get the vaccine after I watch everybody else being a guinea. I will get the vaccine once I watch everybody else being a guinea pig. I will be one of those.
Especially since it was rushed through and it's got Trump's fingerprints on it.
Absolutely. So
it could
you
be
guys can be
water.
the guinea pig. Because all I can think of is that movie, I Am Legend, every time I think about getting that vaccine.
I like the joke where they say all the people saying they don't know what's in the vaccine, they'll eat a McRib.
Yes. Oh, my God, that's hilarious.
Yeah. I don't know what's in it. And then these people act like they're experts and they know what's in the vaccine. Now, how did you get the vaccine? Were you in there, working behind the lab? I don't know. There's all these stories like how do they know it's got, HIV
that's a whole
in it?
other,
Really.
A whole other logical fallacy, appeal to authority. I mean, there's people with doctor in front of their name. I don't want to mention her name, but there's one that's involved in women's health who is not an epidemiologist. And she's one of the main perpetrators that this is going to change your DNA. And they're using something called luciferase to illuminate it under black light to see if you've been vaccinated, and you can't buy or sell. They're tying it into all the biblical stuff, the Revelations, can't buy or sell without a mark on your hand. And the vaccine's got aluminum in it that's going to hook you up to an alien artificial intelligence system.
Oh,
and
right.
One writer said that it wouldn't take the small amount of aluminum and a little hypodermic needle. The iron in your blood could turn your body into an antenna if there was an alien AI, that wanted to capture you and make you part of the hive mind. And that's a whole nother rabbit hole about the people that are expecting Donald Trump to be the disclosure president, who think that he's had intelligence briefings and he knows all about the aliens, and he was just about to spill the truth about the aliens, and then Biden came on the scene, so they want him installed for a second term so we can get disclosure. And Trump really dropped the ball on that one of underestimating the number of people within the UFO community that are looking for a disclosure event. And I hope he doesn't find out in time, because he could really capitalize on that and sucker that aspect of the population into supporting him. He already has to a certain degree. I mean, I know a lot of top names in ufology that are diehard Trump supporters that think he's, the Space Force that he created in the military was so that they could filter in technology to the general public that has been in the secret space program for decades. And I don't think he's in on any of that. Back in 2016, he was quoted as saying, "UFOs, I don't believe in them much, and I don't think anything's different." And he might latch onto that subject, to benefit himself somehow, but he has shown very little interest in the subject in general.
Right. Yeah, except for the space thing, and yeah. Well, I did hear, like, there's no way to know truth from fiction anymore. It's like you either go, well, that rings true, or it doesn't ring true. And so I always say, I don't know. I don't have the answer. But I did hear about, and let's just say this hypothetically, that they're able to put some kind of illuminating factor in the virus, so you can be, they can show that getting into plane. Yes, I have the vaccine. They put into the vaccine. Yes, I have the vaccine. Here, I'm going to glow, right? I mean,
right.
That would be an ideal. So these people are wanting to have us all be autonomous, and they'll just stop you from able to drive from town to town sooner or later, right? You won't be able to get on a plane, train, boat. Your skin will glow. So if this all comes true, is this really something that they can defeat by going in a town and starting to shoot Democrats, right? It's like this is going to be so far spread because you have all these countries in the world they have massive amounts of people dying. So are they saying that all these deaths are fake? These are fake deaths? I don't think so. I don't know how accurate the numbers are, but one thing they do is they compare the amount from last year to this year, and if they have a lot of extra deaths, that's another way of validating the COVID deaths. And they also can validate through going through the waste of a community, going through the water waste, right? And they can do a chemical analysis, and they can see, look how prevalent this is in this community here, and they can go through. There's many ways they can validate the amount of deaths, and I'm sure they're going to have even more sophisticated measures, like maybe some way of counting these mass graves. A lot of these countries just cannot handle the amount of dead, and so they're making these massive group graves. Are they cataloging? Am I going to be underneath Mary and Susan and Joseph, and then above below me is 20 people? I mean, so some way somebody's going to sort this out. I know they have the numbers from the the Spanish plague. They somehow were able to calculate that. How do they calculate the number of dead? They're finding out that it goes back and back further in time, that the first death was probably in September 2019. And I don't have the article right here, but I read the article. And then somebody today said it was probably back in May or March of 2019, the first death. So, we have this information we have, but then over time, the real quote-unquote truth comes out. And we should start wrapping this up. Go ahead. Who wants to go next?
Well, there's an epidemiologist named Michael Osterholm that really proved that he knew what he was talking about. Back in the end of January or February, he appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast and predicted that if things go as they're going, that we should have about 400,000 deaths by the end of 2020. And we're approaching that number right now. So this guy was spot on. He's a professional epidemiologist, Michael Osterholm, and he's now part of Biden's pandemic team. And another person that's on the pandemic team is Rick Bright, and he's the one that Trump fired for blowing the whistle on his incompetency about the way he was handling the pandemic. So Richard Bright's on Biden's pandemic team, and Michael Osterholm's on pandemic team. So I'm happy about those two appointments.
That's great. Okay, so is there anything positive that's going on, Deborah? Any good news?
Sorry.
Such a thing is good news.
Is there any good news? Yes. Mackenzie, what's her name? Who owns Amazon? Jeff Bezos. Mackenzie Bezos donated his ex-wife donated $4.5 billion to charities this week that are charities that help support people who've been marginalized in communities of color.
Wow.
And I think that is phenomenal. And that, I think, is very positive. And she gets lots of brownie points for that one.
Good
Super.
Girl. Yeah, okay. Any other good news?
We're getting a new president.
Yes! Oh, I'm so excited.
Oh, my God. Sorry, you guys. I can't quit laughing. I just want to say that if they do have to escort him out of the White House, I hope they televise it. I would think that is the best TV ever.
Oh, that'd be the greatest thing ever. And the FBI has a term for that. I forget what it was. I think it's like captured subject or something. And I saw one of these FBI experts talking about that. It's like if they have to, they'll send in the SWAT team and extricate him. And I would pay to see that.
They have a little joke one. I was trying to grab it to put it on our page here. I've seen it in Twitter. I don't know how to grab a Twitter little thing, but they have Trump and he's talking away, and they take and roll him out, his entire desk with him with the desk, right? And they roll him down the hall, and then they take him to the end of the hall, and they move the chair out, and they put him on a truck. It's hilarious. And they somehow, there's a way of doing the faces where it's a new animation technique, and they have his real face, and he's talking, and his mouth is moving to the words he's saying, right? And it's how did they do that? That's really exciting.
Well, yeah, it's called a deep fake video. They clone them on the computer CGI, and you can make them say anything you want. So we're really moving into an era of really difficult to tell disinformation. And like you were saying earlier, people don't know how to tell fact from fiction anymore, and it's only going to get worse. And we're entering the way of big data, and the non-augmented human brain is melting down. Everybody's assimilated with their cell phones. And I always tell people, if you really don't like the assimilation into machine intelligence, then smash your iPhone and get rid of your computer, because you're already there. You're online all the time.
Mm-hmm. I'm sitting here with a big screen computer in front of my eyes and my 2 cell phones to the left of me. I mean, I have been bored.
Yeah,
I think
I'm already
transhumanist.
I've got 2 stents in the back of my heart, so I'm already a transhumanist subject. I mean, when exactly? Yeah, good for me. I got my friend Alex Baikalov. He wrote the Scintillate hypothesis, and I'd recommend that book for anybody, because he goes into the creation of the noosphere, where the internet itself becomes sentient, and then we engage ourselves in the transhumanist merger with machine intelligence and the apotheosis of the omega point. And he's really out there with all that stuff. There's actually a transhumanist party. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that. But, Asimov and Heinlein and Roddenberry all talked about that. And I remember going to see Gene Roddenberry in person. I was so blessed. And he was saying, well, we're going to become these cyborg people. First we have glasses, which is like the previous generation, but we're going to have artificial hearts or enhanced hearts. My brother has a pacemaker now. He would have died, right? But he's being kept alive by this pacemaker, and people have artificial limbs now, and so it's just going to keep going in their vision and their eyes and their hearts and their organs, and now we can reproduce them with the printers, and so we won't realize we've been bored. But what's really exciting about the secret space program, they're all reporting to me that, they can be killed and brought back to life. They have limbs that can be regrown. Now, this information, and this is not just one secret space program. I've been talking to these guys and girls, women and men, for 5-6 years now. They're reporting this incredible technology that supposedly exists, and they've been subjected to it. And so that means they transfer. So, for example, if you have a mission in another part of the galaxy, and you're really severely wounded and you're aged and everything, they'll just transfer you into a clone that's made of you before you go into space. So then you come back to Earth and you're put back in this clone and you're 18 years old again. And they said it's not just your mind, because I always said, well, what about the soul? They said, the old analogies of analysis of the transport beaming system, right? Oh, if I go in the beaming system, I'm going to lose my soul, and that's really not my soul. Well, apparently they've said, oh, it's your original soul, and you have full memory, and they can wipe parts of your memory. So if the technologies are out there that we're hearing about, we basically can become physically immortal. And so then what are we, right? So, okay, Debra, what would you like to say?
What would I like to say? I just had a great positive thought and I just lost it. I know what it is. So in one of, I think it's Science Mag, one of the science websites. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
we can. Now you're kind of off to the side, but now you're back.
Okay, so they announced today the results of some tests that prove they can do long-term teleportation. So supposedly they've been able to do this for a long time, but they're now releasing the information to the public is what I believe. But yes, now the science and the white papers are out there that this is possible.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah.
So if they can teleport us, do we lose our souls?
No, we don't lose our souls.
I want my soul to come with me, please. Anyway, we are certainly living in some of those interesting times. So we're going to come back again next week. Oh, you're welcome to come back again anytime you want. Either you, both of you, and if you have anybody else that you want to bring on, let me know. But Russell, I know you come about once a month or every other month, and so especially if something you want to report or talk about, and we'll keep this going. I suspect that once Biden is in, it's going to be boring. Maybe not. I don't know.
Oh,
because
thank
we
God.
might go on to
You know
World
what?
War
I can
III
handle boring for a while.
Oh, yeah.
I'm good with boring.
I could really handle
I'm good with boring.
Give me boring.
So if it gets boring, we'll just do it once a month or something just to kind of keep up with life. But right now, it's just kind of very interesting, and we haven't got through the end of the year yet. We've got another 13 days or whatever it is, and then 2021. So real quick, what do you predict will happen, Russell, in 2021?
I predict that on January the 6th, there'll be an attempt made by the Trump people to try to reinstall him, one more last time. And then one of the things that's disturbing to me personally is all the people that he's jamming into the Pentagon. And it seems like there's about half of the people in the country would actually support Trump in a military coup because they're people that have been convinced that the election was tampered with and it's a stolen election. So all the people that consider themselves patriots would actually support Trump in a military coup to overthrow the election. And if he does that, America's finished. Democracy's finished.
Yeah.
And if we get past the January 6th hurdle and Biden is actually inaugurated on the 20th, then we'll have the Trump folks to deal with that are convinced, at least half of them are convinced that the election was stolen. That's only going to come through people coming forward with information and educating the public to how this happens. And one thing I think they really need to do is to vet whatever software they're going to use for an election to the public prior to them happening. I never even heard about Dominion until this election. I don't know nothing about Dominion software or how that works in the election and whether it can be flipped or switched, to a different candidate. So that whole issue needs to be put to rest for 2024. They need to come up with a software company that's been vetted and everybody's on board with it and everybody trusts it so that this doesn't ever happen again.
Deborah, what do you think will happen?
What do I think will happen for 2021? I think the government will continue a continued disclosure of what the evidence they have of UFOs. I think, the recent release of half a dozen videos over the last 6 months is just the beginning.
Good.
I agree. I am really pushing for disclosure. I think that'll just take us through to the next level of where we need to go to move past the level 0. We are a level 0 civilization. We're not even on level 1 in the Kardashev scale. And we really need to improve the quality of life for everybody who agrees to come into physical form and incarnate on the earth. And, it's not meant to be this incredible, horrendous experience. I'd like to see us have happiness, not the pursuit of happiness. That's kind of like this. You're on a merry-go-round and you keep grabbing for the brass. I'm pursuing happiness, and never get it. And I envision that we finally get happiness and we have this new paradigm. We were going there, and it's like our reality keeps getting hijacked, and we come together with this incredible vision of, love and higher consciousness and the Star Trekian reality, and then boom, hijack. So I'm happy to see that Star Trek is still around, right? And what I see going on, even with the science fiction, is it keeps going into a lot of violence. And I would love in 2021 for the people out there to start making some feel-good movies and things that are way beyond violence, because I'm bored with Trump. I'm bored with wars and rumors of war. I'm bored with violence. I know if I'm bored, a lot of other people are. So I keep holding that vision of, something better for everybody. We're all equal in the divine scheme. There's no one of us is better than the other. These are avatars, and, the next time you're going to come in purple or pink or green or red or something. So each incarnation, each time we choose to come in here and have some kind of experience in physical form, our spiritual evolution is equally important with every other experience. So that's my thoughts and ideas. But I want to give my appreciation to my listeners, and for Russell, Scott Brinegar, and Debra DeFranco. Thank you once again for joining with me. I don't know if we're having another show before the end of the year, but we'll see. It's a possibility. So, okay. Everybody say aloha. Much love and blessings.
Aloha.
And aloha. We'll see you soon.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.